As Aleida Asman, an expert in cultural and collective memory, has stated, the larger social groups, such as nations, do not have a memory, but make one for themselves with the aid of memorial signs, such as ceremonies, images, places, monuments, and so on. And according to Asman, these groups, together with such a memory that is called collective memory, they construct their identity. And for Estonians as a nation, the song celebration has been such a symbol that has helped to form the national identity and to maintain it through times, especially in the face of harsh ideological pressure during the Soviet regime. Asman also argues that this kind of collective memory is backed up by material media, symbols, or practices that have to be grafted in the hearts and minds of individuals. And the extent to which they take hold there depends on the efficiency of the political pedagogy on the one hand, and the level of patriotic or ethnic fervor on the other. And it can be assumed that any occupation power is not interested in inciting the patriotic sentiments of the occupied people. And as Paul Connerton has said, all oppressive regimes, they use their power in a systematic way to deprive its citizens from their memory. Therefore, it is clear that during the Soviet occupation in Estonia, the Soviet authorities didn't see the song festival anymore as an event to promote national feelings, but rather as an opportunity to spread the Soviet ideology instead through the repertoire, rhetorics, memory, and so on. And it also means that during the Soviet time, the Soviet power was the one who decided what should be remembered, officially remembered, and what should be forgotten. But however, the official memory doesn't always reflect what is actually remembered by individuals or larger groups. So our presentation aims to explore this dichotomy between unofficial and official memory, and also the ways in which civic initiative impacted the song festival in Estonia during the Soviet time. And we do it using the song Isamaa, minu by Gustav Ernesaks as an example. And it should be said that our presentation is rather a historical overview, as both of us are music historians, and the Soviet period is our main current research topic. And before I hand out to my supervisor, Anu Kõlar, I will give a brief overview of the song and its historical context. The author of the song, Gustav Ernesaks, was an Estonian choral composer and conductor who had an enormous impact on the song festival during the Soviet time. And his song Mu isamaa on minu, in English, My Fatherland, You Are My Love, is one of his best-known songs that became something of an unofficial anthem for Estonians during the Soviet time. But the roots of the song go back further to the 19th century. So the lyrics belong to the no less famous for Estonians, Estonian poetess Liidia Koidula, who was a writer and a social figure from the National Awakening period. And the poem was published in 1867 in her most famous poetry collection that was written when she was 23 years old. And 2 years later, Alexander Kunileid, who was one of the first Estonian choral composers, set the poem to music, and the resulting song was performed at the first ever song festival in the summer of 1869. So it can be said that the words were etched in the national consciousness of Estonians long before Ernesaks wrote his song. Gustav Ernesaks turned to the poem The Very Difficult and Turbulent Wartime. In 1941, he was mobilized into the Soviet army, and the following year, the state artistic ensembles of the Estonian SSR, as well as of other state republics, were founded in Yaroslavl, Russia, and Ernesaks was also sent there by the government. The circumstances were difficult, and the arrests of colleagues and worries about family had a devastating effect on his mental health. And in 1943, he was sent to Moscow to Botkin Clinic because of neurosis. And after the treatment in hospital, he left it in 1944 and was allowed to stay in Moscow, being accompanied by Hugo Lepner, who was an Estonian organist and composer also, who was assigned to assist Ernesaks in his daily activities. And during these first months of 1944, he composed about 10 choral songs, and isamaa, minu, among them. According to memories, it was completed on 4th March of 1944, and it was composed to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Lydia Koidula's birth. And it is important to mention that in melodic pattern, one could perceive some resemblances to the official anthem of the Republic of Estonia from the first half of the 20th century. It was first performed in Leningrad in July and in October in Tallinn, 1944, and was first included in the program of the Song Festival in 1947. That was the first Soviet Estonian Song Festival, but still relatively free before the beginning of real Stalinist terror. It was also initially included in the program of 1950 Song Festival, but after the second wave of repressions in 1949, it was removed from the program, considered as bourgeois nationalist and thus not acceptable for performance. So it wasn't sung in 1950 and 1955. It was not also included in the 1960 Song Festival official program, but at the end of the second day, the choirs started to spontaneously sing it. It could be seen as a sign of civic initiative. So they sang it without a conductor. Ernesaks conducted only the last verse. And since then, it has been a closing hymn for all song festivals, and for many participants, it is a very awaited and sublime moment of the festival. And now we would like to listen for the first verse of the song. I don't know how good, yeah. It's Gustav Ernesaks conducting it in 1969, and then you can see Tudor Vetik also in 1947.
Hello from me too. I'm glad to be here and talk about us and about you, because our years and with song festivals are uniting us. And right now, I will continue. From here, by applying some aspects of cultural memory theory to study the fate of Ernesaks' song during the Soviet period. First, discussion of some essential terms is necessary. And sorry about this theoretical part of presentation. Most of them you can see on the slides, and I'll just add some comments. First, the theory of cultural memory has been applied by different disciplines like history, literature, religious studies, media, music history. When studying Ernesaks' song, the most important concepts are collective memory, cultural memory, and forgetting. Assmann have defined cultural memory as a form of collective memory, which is shared by a number of people, and it conveys to these people cultural identity. Cultural memory is formed by symbolic heritage embodied in texts, rites, rituals, music, celebration. But there is a difference between communicative and cultural memory, but it is only theoretical. In memorizing process, they often overlapped. But it's not now our focus today. Jan Assmann pointed out the connection between cultural memory and identity. According to him, cultural memory is the faculty that allows us to build a narrative picture of the past, and through this process develop an image and an identity for ourselves. Aleida Assmann has closely studied the functioning of cultural memory and divided it into two aspects: remembering and forgetting. She explained it herself, and for us there are especially important forgetting and not passive but active forgetting, and at the same time active memory and canon and archive also. There are side link to your archive and museum, but I think that we don't have enough time to explain this. The Soviet occupation in the Baltic states meant the Sovietization of all cultural domains, that is the transformation according to the Soviet model. However,
5 minutes remaining. 5 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I try to hurry. Based on Leninist-Stalinism ideologies, it was necessary to transform both individuals and the entire nation. Considering that the identity of a nation as a common social group has been shaped through collective memory, it can be said that collective memory became somewhat a battleground. A battleground of Sovietization. And in the field of culture and art, Sovietization can also be called a Soviet cultural revolution. So let's go to the first song festival. It was celebrated in 1947 and was quite free. Why? I think that the formula about nations and their progressions was still in act, and national in form and socialist in content. It worked, and it meant that every nation could be special, like it's normal, but the next festival was a top of Soviet cultural revolution, and there are some features that are very characterizing to this festival. As Meeta already said, the isamaa was firstly included to the program, but was removed after that. If the next 1955 was largely similar to the previous one, then after Stalin's death, the atmosphere in the Soviet Union began to normalize. In the 1960 Song Festival took place in a renewed political context. But the singers were not afraid, but as you see, Ernesaks' song, Mu isamaa, was still not in the official program. And why? It is clear that the musical elite was afraid, but no singers. And now it's very important testimony from one of the singer, and I hope that we have 20 seconds to read it. She said how it was, and it was very touching movement to notice this. So, yeah, maybe you can watch it later, because there are some conclusions about fighting Soviet power against our national identity, and I tried to make some conclusions, but yeah, our time is over. So I really hope that you can see it later also. Thank you, and sorry for being so long, and yeah.